And then conservation. I got to do a Sasquatch program, which is a whole nother day, different discussion for a different day. I got to go to the Peabody Museum at Yale. And after I finished my program, somebody said, I know you're into birds. Would you like to meet the curator for the birds? Like, sure. He's like, do you want to see the wet collection or the dry collection? Wet? I don't know what that is. And it's like the wet collection. So that means it's in jars. Okay, so we look at dead birds in jars. Okay, that's pretty, the dry? Okay, so that means it's stuffed. And so I'm just kind of thinking, I'm like, do you have any extinct species? He's like, I'll have to go get the key. So he unlocks these cabinets. How many of you know what the heath hen was? This is stuff we need to be teaching our kids now. The extinction isn't the dinosaurs. This stuff happened not that long ago. Drawers full of heath hens. Drawers full of passenger pigeons. Those were here in Iowa. Okay, the last one shot in the wild was with the plaque for it is Wyalusing, but it was just right across the river from us. How many of you know what a Carolina parakeet is? Those were here. We had those in Iowa. Bachman's warblers, drawers full of them. They didn't have stuffed skins from the ox because they'd already been eaten. All they had were the bones from them. Okay, that's the kind of stuff that we need to be teaching our kids. So, reason we teach birds at camp is because of the ability to teach values, and that's something I think is really important we instill into our kids. We have 9 bigger core things that we try and teach. We want to increase awareness. My favorite thing is when kids get off the bus. Here's the camper who's going to be here in April. The kids get off the bus. What time's lunch? When do we get to go to our cabins? What are we having for lunch? When do we get? After being there for 2 days, the questions are, what kind of bird is that? What kind of acorn is this? What kind of feather is this? What is that called? Do you hear? The questions totally change because we've increased their awareness. Stimulate their curiosity. I talked to you about the birding, just to see that enthusiasm get bigger and bigger as they go through their class. Learning is fun. A lot of times kids get into school and they get the mentality like, you got to go to school. Learning should be something that we do the rest of our life. Learning is fun, and that's something that we model with them. I always talk to them about being a naturalist is like peeling an onion. Every time you learn something, there's more to be learned underneath there. Observe through books, experts, and observations. I don't need to be there. You guys have the tools to do this. Diversity is a strength. Life's not fair. Give hope for the future. We've got a lot of great success stories here in Iowa with the river otter. Okay, it wasn't that long ago. We did not have river otters. Those were introduced here. The trumpeter swan is a success story. How many of you are familiar with the Swainson's hawk story? Brian Woodbridge? And that's our bald eagle. That population was going down, 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 down. This guy from the Parks Service in California found them going down to help me out here. Where's the Swainson's hawks end up going down to for the winter? Brian Woodbridge's stuff. South America, south of Brazil, and he was finding that they're spraying the crops down there with this chemical called monocrotophos. It had been real easy to get mad. It's Venezuela. Get mad at that government and boycott their stuff. No, they worked together with the chemical company that was making it, Ciba-Geigy, and they were able. In 1997, there was 20,000 birds lost that year. In 2001, it was 13 birds. That's a success story. We want to give hope for the future. And then knowledge plus caring equals responsible choices. That is an equation. If you guys saw the OWL program before, the OWL's here because someone was lacking the knowledge. I'm going to be getting out a bird right now that is here because someone was lacking the caring. That equation, we use it in almost every single one of our classes. If you think of everything that you do, how well you make your decisions depend on how much you know about something, and number 2, how much you care about something. So I'm going to get ready to get out our red-tailed hawk. She gets nervous when she gets in front of people. So I'm going to, because you're big and scary, I'm going to put down a piece of paper here. When she goes to the bathroom, it's important that you do not laugh, okay? She is a wild animal, and she's been doing this for a very long time, but I want her, I would like her to be as calm as possible when she's here. Sometimes she does jump off my hand. That's normal. So it's called baiting. Most of the time she doesn't, but if she does, she's got enough power in her arm that she'll be able to right herself. So you can take pictures. Nothing's going to bother her. The flash doesn't bother her. The whine doesn't bother her. So she'll be right here on my fist. So I'll get her out here, and I'll let you know why we have her here at camp. This is a female red-tailed hawk. First of all, we know she's a female because of her size. In hawks, eagles, and owls, the girls are bigger than the boys. In red-tails, that's not so obvious because we see it in birds that eat other birds. There's a third of a difference. Red-tails eat a lot of rodents, so there's just a little bit of difference between the male and the female. She's called a red-tail because of that real pretty cinnamon-colored tail. They don't get that tail until their second year. If you look at her right wing, you see how it doesn't lay down just right? This bird was found beginning of summer, middle of June, by a farmer who was driving around checking his soybeans. It's interesting, this bird was told to me that it was found just west of Interstate 35 and just south of Interstate 80. She's been in captivity for 21 years. This is about right now where Jordan Creek Mall is. So when you think back 21 years ago, that was all farm ground. That's where she was found. This farmer saw her sitting on the ground. Right away he knew something was wrong. These birds like to sit up high and perch up high. If they're down on the ground, it's usually because they're eating something. So he grabbed a jacket that he had in his vehicle and he took off after this bird. She took off running. So his instinct was right. Something was wrong with her. He ran her down. He threw the jacket over her. When their eyes are covered, they feel nice and calm. So he wrapped her up, put her in a box, and took her over to a vet over in Adel by the name of Tom Holcomb. And Tom took one look at that right wing. He could see something was wrong with that wing. He pulled it out. He x-rayed it. What he found in that wing were shotgun pellets. I want to make something perfectly clear before I move on. The person who shot this bird was not a hunter. Hunters are people who have permits for the birds that they shoot. Hunters are people who practice ethics. There is no season for hawks. The person who shot this bird was a criminal. It is against the law to shoot any bird that you do not have a permit for. Normally when a bird comes in like this, they would take that right wing and bird bones are hollow, so they shatter like one of these light bulbs in here. It's not going to break nice and neat like if you and I were to fall off a bike or fall out of a tree. What they would normally do is pull that wing against the body and do something called a figure 8 wrap, which would hold it against the body, and if it gets close enough to the shape of the wing again, they can let it go. They couldn't do that with this wing because the bones had already started to heal. He estimates that she'd been on the ground for 5 days. Now, in 5 days' time, she should have been close to starvation. She should have been at the very least tipsy. She wasn't. She was in pretty good health. Her first pellet that she coughed up in captivity were grasshopper exoskeletons. She was hopping around eating grasshoppers, which tells you her spirit for survival. So that wing, they could have tried to re-break it, but that's when you do nerve damage and muscle damage, and so the decision was made just to leave her. See that crippled wing? So her wing, if I put her up here on this little sill and had her fly down, she could make it down to the floor. She wouldn't go in a straight line, but if I put her down here on the floor and had her try to have her fly up, she couldn't get back up there. She has no upward lift. So that is why she is in captivity. The only reason we know that she is 21 years of age, remember that cinnamon colored tail? That first year they don't have that cinnamon tail, they just have a banded tail. If you look over here at some of the hawk IDs, they'll show you that juvenile or immature bird. They've got a banded tail. She had that banded tail. So that's the only reason that we know her age. That person was never caught for their crime, the person who shot this bird, but I want to go back to that equation, that knowledge plus caring equals responsible choices. That person was lacking the caring. And caring is one of those things that you are either walking down the path where you are caring or you're walking down the path where you are not caring. People don't jump back and forth, okay? Think of how far you need to be down that path of not caring, that it's okay to go out and shoot a red tail. I still run into people, that still happens. There was one that happened not too long ago in Carroll County. It was 2 high school kids and having some fun. They shot a red tail. The judge, when he was giving them community service, decided to send them over to Wildlife Rehab Center, which is the first thing they did the necropsy to show what the impact of the bullets were on the bird that they had shot. So One of the boys never went back when his community service was up. The other one stayed around and still volunteered there. So you can see there's the opportunity to have, I guess, a change of heart. So caring is one of those things that you need to practice. Many of you here play a musical instrument or play a sport. You know that if you don't practice, you don't all of a sudden perform well. If you aren't practicing your piano or practicing your scales or practicing your fingering, you don't magically perform in the recital. If you're not shooting your free throws, it doesn't just magically happen when you're in the game. It's something that you need to practice, and that's what caring is as well. You need to practice caring in your daily life. Little things, you know, call yourself a conservationist, you recycle aluminum cans. That's a little thing, but that's a way that you are practicing conservation. I recycle, I take paper back. That's a little thing, but that's a way that you are showing caring. Turning off the lights, those are little things, but it's how we stay in practice. So when the big things show up, you're in practice. You're ready to step up and stay in that caring mode. This is the time of year that's hard for these birds. I don't know how many of you have been paying attention. See everybody who's migrating now. The red tails are just starting to move. The eagles have been kind of scattered all winter because things haven't really frozen. If you look at this part of her beak, it's called the sear. It's really yellow, and her feet are really yellow. That's great. We did that on purpose. We put her hawk house so it faces east and it faces south, so she gets plenty of sunlight on there. In birds that don't get enough sunlight, those are going to look greenish. And birds that are like inside all the time, that's going to be gray or ashen. So you can see she's getting plenty of sunlight. One of the things we didn't think about though is the fact that she can look out on that ridge and watch all these birds moving up and down the Des Moines River Valley. Spring is rough. We'll hear her out here when she'll do that red-tailed hawk scream from her window. We'll be out working around or have a group and you hear this. I used to think she just did it randomly. I always have my binoculars with me. It's interesting who's the teacher and who's the student. I started paying attention whenever she screamed. I'd look around and there was usually not one but two red tails. Hawks mate for life. And what she's looking for another red tail that hasn't found a mate. And she'll get lucky. There'll be a couple of times in the spring she'll call down a male. He'll stick around there for a couple of hours. He has no way of knowing like what is this house that her sound is coming out of. She has no way of saying like, listen, I'm shot. I'll spend the rest of my life in captivity. So after a couple of hours, he ends up moving on.